We're now joined at the podium by Coach Dana Holgorsen from West Virginia. Coach, welcome, and your thoughts about the upcoming season.
Thank you. Great to be here in Dallas, for the second year in the row here, heading into our second year into the Big 12. Probably the biggest difference going into this year as opposed to last year is everything that we dealt with last year is pretty much opposite this year. Had a lot of good things coming off a big bowl game, and had some star power on offense and all the experience on defense, and very inexperienced on defense. It's the exact opposite going into this year, but nonetheless, it's exciting to be in the Big 12, and just looking forward to getting started here. Tired of vacation, ready to get back and spend time with our kids to try to get us better, ready, to head into the second year here in the Big 12.
Okay, we'll take questions. We've got a question right in the very middle here. Let's get a microphone up to you.
Dana, Tim Griffin with the San Antonio Express News. I wonder if you could talk about the arrival of Charles Sims, what potentially he could mean to your offense, and just kind of how he materialized on your doorstep to be able to come in and play with your program.
We're extremely fortunate to have his services for 1 year. He's a great kid. He's a tremendous football player. I was fortunate to be able to be involved in recruiting him when I was at Houston, and I had him for the first year there in 2009, and that was probably his best year statistically. Was his first year. I know he's been nicked up a little bit here in the last couple of years, but I didn't promise him anything. He knows what I'm all about. He knows how I coach. He knows what our offense is about. So we need some playmakers on offense. After losing, I think 90% of our production last year, or whatever that crazy number is, he knew he'd be able to come in and fit in and get an opportunity to play in the Big 12. That was his motive. He loves the University of Houston. He was, he got his degree from there. He'll be a Cougar for life. But he wanted to be able to play in the Big 12 to be able to increase his draft stock, which will put him in position to be able to get that done.
Got a question on the far outside right. Put your hand up, please. There we go.
Coach Dan Harrelson, TheDPost.com. We keep hearing about these up-tempo offenses, and then the rule changes that will only help these up-tempo offenses. With your coaching tree, you mentioned Houston and your time at Texas Tech with Coach Sumlin, Leach, and yourself. Do you think you guys have changed the game, and do you think you've changed it for the better?
It depends on who you ask. There's some guys that are gonna. There's some guys that are upset about that, but I know we changed it. My time at Texas Tech was very fortunate to be a longtime friend of Mike Leach, and when he got the job at Texas Tech, I was fortunate to be able to come in with him in the very beginning, and we did a lot of good things there over the course of 8-9 years. And there wasn't a whole lot of teams in the Big 12 that were doing that style of offense at that point in time, to whereas now I think you look at it, and I think there's a lot of teams doing it for a reason. It's trickled down into the high school ranks for years and years, going back all the way when Coach Briles was at Stephenville High School, which was a couple of decades ago. But it changed it changed in high school. It's changing coast to coast. It's not just limited to the Big 12. I mean, you look all the way across the country. There's a lot of teams that are doing what we're doing offensively. Which is the spread or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's catching on across the country. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. As far as the injury thing goes, I don't have any evidence whatsoever that it's increasing the likelihood of guys being injured more. I don't see that. And then it has helped with parity in college football. There's a number of other things that have helped with parity in college football. The spread has probably caused a little bit of parity as well.
Got a question on the front right here in the middle.
David Ubben, TheDPost.com. You sort of just alluded to it, but what is your attitude toward the guys like Nick Saban and Brett Bielema who do feel like the injuries are? I mean, do you feel like that has legitimacy? And also, Mike Gundy here yesterday said that the spread was, to paraphrase from him, basically the biggest influencer of parity in college football in the last decade or so. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd tell him to get over it because it's not going to change. I mean, there's things that that have. I mean, it's going into the NFL, for crying out loud. I mean, there's people being hired in the NFL that have, you know, the background in college football to be able to, you know, create a little bit more parity. So, you know, don't see it changing anytime soon. You know, and so you better learn to adapt to it.
We got a question all the way in the back, right in front of the TV cameras.
Ed Owens with the Dominion Post. Coach, you talked about Sims already, and you mentioned some of the deficiencies, I guess, on offense in terms of experience. One of the places you do have a lot of depth is at running back. Do you have to be a little more creative when you've got Sims and Bowie and Garrison and Dreamius to maybe get those guys in the game, get the ball in their hands? And are you planning on doing anything differently to maximize that potential?
I wouldn't consider them deficiencies. We haven't took a snap yet, so who knows? We might be pretty good on offense. I think we got to wait and see. Do feel good about where we're at running back wise. When you look at Dreamius Smith, one of the more sought after running backs in the JUCO ranks last year, was with us in spring practice. We've talked about Charles. Dustin Garrison was a full-time starter as a true freshman, and Andrew Bowie was a guy that had 200 yards against Texas last year. So got capable guys that as deep there as we've ever been. That's for certain. It's probably a little bit more, you know, important up front. If you want to establish the run game, you better have an O-line that's able to get that done. And I think we got some quality guys up front. Quentin Spain's here with us today. He's a great kid. He's a 2-year starter. He's massive, and if we can get a couple other guys to do what he is able to do, then I think our run game will be just fine.
Got a question here on the left in the middle.
Hi, Dana. Suzanne Halliburton with the Austin American-Statesman. I was asking several other head coaches about this to think back to their very first job as assistant football coach. How much fun you have, how much fun it wasn't, what was your first paycheck, and what were your primary duties?
I would imagine everybody's answer to that question is going to be the same, which is my first job, Valdosta State. You know, I had as much fun there for 2-3 years as I have as any other job that I've had. There's not a whole lot of pressure. You know, you do it. You're just excited to be able to be in the game. It's one of the greatest professions that's out there. So you're excited to be in the game. You're learning. You know, you're not making any money. You know, so it's not about that. But you really don't care when you're 22 years old. You get a place to lay your head down and you get a couple of free meals, you're happy. So, you know, it was one of the better jobs that I've had, and I would imagine everybody else would say the same thing.
Can't be this easy for Coach. Suzanne has got a follow-up.
And then Dana, piggybacking on that, it seems head football coaches' salaries have been escalating through the roof, and now it seems to be there's bidding war for quality coordinators and top assistants. Do you see a ceiling on that coming anytime soon?
No, I really don't. It's you know, we had to replace 2 or 3 guys this year that moved on for more money or whatever it was. So you know, it's changing. I remember, you know, there's been plenty of days where there hasn't been a need for changing assistants because nobody leaves. I think I was on the same staff at Texas Tech for 4 or 5 years before it changed. I know Coach Browse has done a tremendous job of retaining his staff, but you know, it is changing, and those guys see. I mean, they see the need. Some of the other staffs want to do what they're looking at, and so how are they going to change that? They can't come after me, so they come after the assistants to be able to do what we're doing. I just use me as an example, but there's been plenty of other examples across the country as well.
In the middle, about halfway back.
Dana, you guys lost Geno from last year. He's off to the NFL. Just analyze trying to fill those rather big shoes to get your quarterback and get somebody up and running by the starting game.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to lose good players in college football. It just happens every single year, and Geno's going to be a great pro, and we don't try to compare him to anybody on our staff or any of that, but we're in the same situation as I think 7 or 8 other Big 12 schools right now. There is the quarterback play in the Big 12 last year was phenomenal, and it's always going to be phenomenal. It's just going to be with newer people, you know. So who our guy is going to be, I don't know. You know, we got we got Clint Trickett coming in, who has probably as much experience in the college game as anybody in the Big 12, just because he's been a starter in some big games. He's been around it his whole life. He's a very smart kid, graduated at Florida State in 3 years, backed up 2 first-round draft picks at Florida State in 3 years. So he's been around it his whole life and is a good player, and didn't tell him that he was going to start either. He's got to come in and beat an experienced Paul Millard out, who is taking more reps than anybody on our campus. I mean, he's taken 50% of the reps for a long, long time in practice. So he knows the offense better than anybody. And then you got Ford Childress, who's going to continue to get better and better. He may have more potential than any of the other 2 guys. He's just young with 4 years remaining. So I like where we're at with it, and look forward to getting there and being able to coach him. I'm not going to put a timetable on it. When one of those guys steps up, we're going to name the starter and move forward with reps.
Question in the front middle.
Dana, with regard to getting your best 5 skill guys on the field, how much different could that be this year with a guy like Cody, who's not like a tall outside receiver, an inside guy, or the wealth of depth they have a running back? And could you see running backs playing slot because they are talented, but they can only get so many carries?
Yeah, there's a couple of them that I think will be able to move around like that, and then I think there's a couple of slot receivers that we have that could move around into the backfield as much well. So that's a game plan issue. That's with a guy like Cody Clay, he may be our best football player on our team. He can be in the backfield. He can line up at tight end. He can line up at slot receiver and do a lot of things. It's all about personnel groupings, which a lot of defenses are gonna try to personnel group us as well as they can, and we got some guys in the Big 12 defensively that are as good at it as anywhere in the country. Our job offensively is to try to disguise that, to try to put people in positions they don't think are going to be there, and then be able to execute our offense with regardless of where they line up.
On the second row middle.
Dana, do you feel that with Stedman and Tavon gone, that other receivers will have to step up, and that'll make you guys maybe a little more deeper at the position?
Yeah, that's accurate. I haven't lost any sleep over Tavon and Stedman moving on to the NFL. 2 great players, but that holds people back. It's not the first time that we've lost receivers in the NFL and then been able to line up the next year and execute our offense. So it gets me a little bit excited to be able to get out there and face the challenge of being able to take 10, 12 guys and coach them. And try to develop them. I mean, when I got to West Virginia 2.5 years ago, there was a couple of guys that hadn't made a tremendous amount of plays. And we coached them and we developed them, and they turned into phenomenal football players and will play in the league for a long time.
Question on the left side, sorry.
Yeah, Dana, Kirk Bowles from the Austin American-Statesman. I was asking you about the rigors of travel on your teams and how punitive was the travel to Austin and then Lubbock the following week, and has the Big 12 helped you there? I know you go to K-State and TCU back-to-back, but do you feel like it's a pronounced disadvantage?
Kirk, I've never bought into that. It doesn't bother me one bit. I will never use travel as an excuse, for a win or for a loss. Now, Coach Huggins and Coach Carey and Coach Mazey are basketball coaches and baseball coach. They should be complaining about it. When you play 2-3 games in a week, it's different. When you play 1 game a week on 12 Saturdays, in 14 weeks, it's not that big of a deal. We got 5 road games, and the routine of those road games will remain the same regardless if we were going to get on a plane and fly to Syracuse, New York, or fly to Lubbock, Texas, or South Florida, or Austin, Texas. It doesn't matter. It's all about routine to us. We're going to get back after the game on Saturday, and we're going to line up and have the same routine the next week.
Anybody got more questions for Coach? Got a question here on the front. Just a moment till we get a microphone to you.
Coach, what does Keith Patterson bring to the table, play calling wise, that's different from Joe DeForest?
Experience. He's been a defense coordinator for a long time. He's extremely familiar with what we want to do defensively. He's been doing that for quite some time. Really happy with the transition. Think he's taken it and ran with it. He, one advantage that he has is he was able to bring in a couple of his own guys that he was comfortable with that have experience in that defense. So really like our defensive staff right now. The communication has been the biggest probably improvement. But Keith's done that before. He's been a DC before. He's got a bunch of experience calling plays in this specific defense that we want to run, and I think the results will show.
We can't let him off that easy, fellas. Got a question on the front left?
Price Cherry, Waco Trib. Dana, the fact that so many teams have quarterback turnover this year, as you mentioned, 7 or 8 teams, does that create a more wide open league, a little more uncertainty as y'all heading into the year?
Well, last year I think it is, as a result of the same thing, just with experienced quarterbacks. Had a bunch of guys coming back that had played a lot of football, and any given weekend, somebody was going to win, somebody's going to lose, and you could never really predict how that was going to work out. So I think this year is probably the same thing. Big 12 top to bottom is as good a conference as there is in college football. It's as a competitive conference as there is in college football. Now some years may not be like it was the last 2 years. You may have, depending on who starts and all that next year, you may have 2 or 3 really good quarterbacks coming back, and then half the other schools are not going to have quarterbacks coming back. So I think everybody's pretty much in the same boat. Everybody's got the ingredients to win. It's how you develop them, and it's catching some breaks that win you some games.